This is not Sparta. This is episode 3 of 24 Lies Per Second, Guernsey's most trusted film podcast with the words 24 lies per and second in the title. I am not Spartacus, I'm Peter Taylor, and the one remake that I'd hate to see is Snakes on a Plane. With me are Winter,
Sophie's Choice, biscuits or oranges.
And Russell.
The Godfather. If they remake that, I'm going to the mattresses.
In this episode, we'll be talking about recent trips to cinema, as well as new films to rent and buy on DVD. Currently playing at the Mallard Cinema are the excellent The Muppets, the really worth seeing The Woman in Black, the best exotic Marigold Saga Hotel, Safe House, A Monster in Paris, and Wanderlust. Of course, the real film of interest is the Oscar, BAFTA, everything winning The Artist. We did discuss this last time round, but we'll have another go because I know another one of us of our party have seen it now. Russell, what was your verdict?
I think I said last week that I thought it was excellent, thought it was absolutely fantastic, and kind of had another little kind of think about it this week, and it's good to know that I still think it's fantastic. My mind hasn't changed, my mind hasn't done a big U-turn and kind of changed my mind on it. The problem with it, I think we said last year, is that you can kind of feel like you're just suffering from compassion fatigue of how many good things you can say about it. But at the end of the day, it's clever, it's funny, it's exciting, it's brilliantly acted, it's brilliantly edited, it's brilliantly directed. I think it was the right decision that the chap, I'm not going to try and pronounce his name, it's Michel Hazanavicius or something like that, who kind of got up and won his Best Directing Oscar a few weeks ago at the Oscars, because he just deserved it so much, because it's such a well-directed film. My only real negative about it in general, I think, is I think it does sag a little bit in the middle. It kind of sags under the weight of what it's trying to do. But then it does kind of rally again and come back for what is a brilliant third act full of kind of tension, and then still retaining all the humour, and then quite a surprising end as well. That one thing I didn't really expect. I won't give it away for people who haven't seen it, but there is twist is the wrong word, but there is quite an interesting kind of sign off to it, and that I certainly didn't see coming. One thing that I may have touched on last week was I do just think it's just so important to go and see it at the cinema. I don't think you'll have anywhere near the same experience of the film, kind of seeing it at home in your own kind of lounge watching it.
So are you saying don't get it on DVD?
No, I'm saying get it on DVD because you'll enjoy it, but I think you are missing out on a massive part of it by not seeing it in a room with other people, but also just the whole the scale of it, in the cinema, and kind of the completely different experience that you'll have, because it's obviously because of its being silent in kind of inverted commas, but I think it's just a completely different experience to going to see a normal film, because I've never seen a silent film in the cinema before, and I think a lot of other people haven't either, and so you kind of, that's part of the experience of going to see it. So that would be my only thing. And so if you haven't caught it yet at the Mallard,
I haven't seen it, and I know it's out, and I know, Winter, you just went to see it at the cinema, but so you definitely recommend that I should go and see this.
100%. I think you've got to go and see it at the cinema. Winter, what did you think about it?
Yeah, I think going to see it at the cinema is something that has to be done, simply because it will encourage the Mallard or whomever to show these films, to put these events on. My sort of thoughts on The Artist, I really enjoyed it. It's a very funny film, partly because it's quite a generous film in that it's very good-hearted and good-natured and so on. It tells a very simple story, and what I like about it is that it shows how international cinema is. There's a lot of talk, if you go onto Internet Movie Database, about either if you really like it, then you're some kind of pretentious douche, but if you don't like it, you're a complete idiot, go back and watch Transformers. But at the end of the day, people all around the world will watch Transformers because it's easy to understand. A lot of these big action films are very simple. On Sunday, I watched Real Steel, Hugh Jackman movie about fighting robots.
Yeah.
So Rock'em Sock'em Robots, the movie, essentially. But you know what? It's really good because it's a simple story, well crafted, well told. The Artist is a better film simply because it's as long as it needs to be. The form in which it's made perfectly fits the content. And like I said, it's just a generous, old-fashioned film. And one of the nice things was there's some dancing in it, for instance, and the camera doesn't cut away from the dancing. The camera shows you people dancing. It shows you people doing these things without edits. And so you can see the real skill of performance. Even there's a lot of fuss over the little dog. I think it's called Uggy or something.
Yeah, Uggy,
that appears in
right.
it. very talented dog, but you see this dog do tricks, and the camera stays still on the dog, and it does the tricks, and it's the reason, for instance, why Jackie Chan's so good, because they tend not to break into the action with edits when Jackie Chan does his stuff, because he's essentially a dancer, as it were. And this is exactly the same. It's a film. It's got time for its own subject. It doesn't rush you along, but it's still. I think it's the perfect length. And the only other thing I can say is right at the start of the film, we sort of first encounter the actor Valentin, and he's. It's done in such a playful way. The first line of dialogue on the screen, the first sort of intertitle says, "I will not speak. You will not get me to speak." And so there's a lot of self-referencing in there.
What I was pointing to last week. I think I talked about a lot of the in-jokes and things. Not necessarily in-jokes, but just clever new ways of working around that kind of silent film format. That what I really enjoyed. Like obviously there's that scene with the feather that floats down. And that's kind of when it hits there's a feather that floats down through the screen. It's kind of he's having a nightmare, and it hits the floor, and it's like there's an explosion sound that's really loud, and you don't expect it, and it's kind of like, whoa, it's him having a nightmare about the explosion of sound in the cinema, and the talkies coming through, and him fearing about his demise and so on. And there was just those little things that what I loved about it the most, to be honest with you.
And also, it's a film of amazing compositions. There's a great scene on a staircase, and there's just hundreds of people seemingly walking up and down these stairs, and it's a very static shot. It's slightly further out than you would expect such a shot to be, but it perfectly captures what the scene's about, because there's a moment when he's left alone on the stairs, and then the rush of people starts again, and it really shows what film used to be is a visual medium. And I find a lot of problem with many modern films is that they kind of forget that, and so you get these characters that are just sort of Basil exposition. They turn up and say, "Well, wouldn't you say blah 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 blah, plot point." Whereas obviously with the artist, because they are restricted to title cards and so on, you don't get that at all, and you just get a really fun sense, first of all, of what film is at its most basic. It's a visual storytelling, and it's a very inventive visual storytelling in this case. And secondly, I really like the way they make filmmaking and the life of old Hollywood and so on. It just looks like a load of fun. At the start of the film, he's in a film called Russian Affair, and it's spying and people being electrocuted and biplane escapes and all that stuff. And I really, really want to see that film. It looks balls out brilliant.
It will be the artist
really
too.
Do you think they've made that film like I know they did in Quentin Tarantino's thing? I forgot the name now. The World War,
Inglourious Basterds.
Inglourious Basterds. Yeah,
How did you forget that name?
I don't know why. it's so forgettable. No, but they made the film that they showed in the cinema there. So I wonder if maybe they have made that.
I hope
you have
so.
to look into
go and watch it. It would be. It just looked brilliant.
My Week with Marilyn made a fleeting appearance at the Mallard since our last episode, and it follows the filming of Laurence Olivier's The Prince and the Showgirl, in particular telling the story of the young third assistant director who was given the job of looking after Marilyn Monroe.
Gentlemen, it is my special pleasure to introduce a woman who clearly needs no introduction. A very great actress on her first trip to London.
Marilyn, is it true you wear nothing in bed but perfume?
Oh. Darling, as I'm in England, let's say I sleep in nothing but Yardley's lavender.
Marilyn Monroe fancying you. Come on.
She breaks hearts. She will break yours.
I wouldn't buy the little girl lost act if I were you. I think Marilyn knows exactly what she's doing.
All people ever see is Marilyn Monroe.
What must it be like to be the most famous woman on earth?
Winter, you went to see this one, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. You know what? It's a good film. It's entertaining. It's quite, it's diverting for an hour and a half or whatever. It's full of some great performances. I think Kenneth Branagh probably did it just to play Laurence Olivier, which is quite a good impression. It's not just a bit of mimicry. It gives you an idea of what Olivier was like, because he, as well as being the world's greatest ever actor, he was also a bit pretentious. He was a bit overblown and full of himself. I just don't see the purpose to this film. And also, it's very television. It starts off straight away. You know, someone you got a view across a London street or wherever, and it says, "I always remember that summer in blah 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 blah," and you think, right, this is something to watch after, upstairs, downstairs, or downtown. And it's of that kind of. It's a comfortable film, I think, for people who either remember the period or look back on that as something that was better than it actually was.
And My Week with Marilyn, as I said before, is released on DVD on the 16th of March. The next couple of weeks, we've got a couple of new releases at the Mallard. We've got We Bought a Zoo on the 16th and Contraband on the same day, also 21 Jump Street. And The Hunger Games comes out on the 23rd of March, and we'll be discussing those hopefully next week. Screened last week was the 80s classic The Goonies. Directed by Richard Donner and produced by Steven Spielberg, the film was screened as part of a fundraising event for Sanya Shorts and sees a gang of kids go on an Indiana Jones-style adventure to find treasure and stop their homes being demolished. So, does it still stand up, guys?
Yes. It does.
I have a vested interest because I am essentially Sanya Shorts. Me and Lisa Godion. Like I say, we've tried to arrange some screenings to raise some money for our little film festival thing, and so we showed the Goonies. And the reason we showed the Goonies is because it's brilliant. I'm sorry, I know that's not very good film criticism, but it's such good fun. And the reason it stands up is because it's just raucous. It's full of mayhem. There's
kids ludicrous.
Just, I mean, what was interesting about the screening, I thought, was that afterwards, chatting to people went, "I really enjoyed it. I forgot it was so. Did they say that?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of bad language in there. I think it's probably got a questionable history when it comes to the representation of disability. But to be honest, I don't know if that's a big deal when you talk about the Goonies or not. I don't think they would make the same film these days, which is a shame, I think, to be honest with you, because like you said, it is just a fantastically enjoyable romp, and there's no malice in it whatsoever, and you know that it's just supposed to be brilliant and comical. And I mean, one thing about, I haven't watched it in a few years, and the pace of it is just phenomenal. It just starts and then it just goes right the way through, because it's about 2 hours long, I think. You know, just under. Yeah. And I've watched films that are 90 minutes that I've struggled through, you know, more than this. I mean, I just think it just absolutely hits the ground running, and it just never lets up. It just, you know, takes you from the opening of the Fratellis getting out of the prison to then, you know, back home. No exposition, just keeps the story going really cleverly. And then, you know, as soon as you're underground, kind of going through all the caves, it just keeps going. I thought it was brilliant. It's still hilarious. I mean, you know, like I said, we were at that screening watching it, and you've got adults sat there laughing when Chunk's spilling his guts about all the bad stuff he's ever done in his life, and it kind of, yeah, that cutting back and forth to him doing it. I'm smiling now because it's just so funny. I mean, like you said, it's a really sweet film, and I think one big part of it is that, you know, you probably have to have watched it as a kid potentially to get that joy of it.
See, I'm not so sure about that, because I know
my question, because I haven't, and I watched it when I was 17 and I didn't like it, and that's another reason why I didn't come and see it on Friday.
I would think that would be the worst age to watch it. Kind of, if you're 17, 18, because you're going to sit there and think, this is rubbish. This is for kids. Why am I watching it? You know, it's not relevant to me at all. I mean, it came out in '85, so I was only 1 when it came out. So I obviously didn't watch it then, but I must have caught it probably before I was 10, I reckon. And I think that at that kind of age, you know, the central theme of it in terms of, you know, the familial kind of house being taken off you and having to move away and all your friends going away, that anyone can relate to that. You know, I remember when I was a kid and my mum and dad sold our house, and we didn't leave Plymouth. We moved 3 miles up the road. But the kids that I grew up with and lived in our little road, I was devastated. I remember saying to mum and dad, we can't move, and it's just that same kind of thing that you relate to about the Goonies, and it's just the idea of it was so horrible, and it's just you can sit and relate to it and have no problems. But I can imagine.
But that's what I'm saying. It is only for young children and people that have watched it as young children to reminisce, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay,
I mean, I haven't watched it recently, but I have no desire to.
Having spoken to people after the screen, there were a couple of people there who were there with their kids, and they hadn't seen it, or one of them had seen it, but you know, Dad hadn't seen it or whatever. And they just said it's just genuinely a funny film of the type of which you don't see made. Because even like Super 8 came out last summer, and I was really keen to watch Super 8 because I thought this looks like the Goonies and E.T., even though I really don't like E.T. at all. But it looks like an 80s film.
Sorry, hang on a second. I was looking at looking at my script, seeing what was coming next, and I think I might have heard Winter say I don't like E.T.
I just don't get it. All right, let's leave it at that and move on
Come
as
back
if
to this another week,
it was
perhaps.
never said. Anyway, the thing was, I thought this film looks like an 80s film. It looks like the kind of raucous film that I grew up with. Son of Rambo was really good because the kids swore and did dangerous stuff I remember doing.
Yeah.
But with the Goonies, there is a genuine bit of naughtiness to the children. Whereas in Super 8, I think they swore a couple of times, but it's all a bit too mushy
They're
for
all
my
a bit
liking.
too clean cut and a bit too model behaviour almost. You know, kind of looking at them, and like I said, you look at the kids in the Goonies.
They're like
like any
gang
kids.
of absolute terrors, and they're brilliant for it. And they genuinely do not care, and they're going on this adventure to find pirate treasure. And that's the other thing. One of the surprising things about the Goonies is just how expensive the film looks as well, because they go down into the sort of pirate caverns that are all booby traps. It just sounds ridiculous as I'm saying it, but there's all these booby traps and there's these big sets that have been built for this film. I mean, serious money and thinking has gone into this movie, and I just think it's just. I said this about the artist on it, but it's a very generous, fun movie. It's very simple, and I think. There's a lot of stuff with toupees falling off and people getting their pair of false teeth in the balls and all that kind of. But it's genuine. Sorry, and it's funny. It's really funny. Now I like the Goonies, but what I want to see is the deleted scene at the end of the Goonies, right? When they're on the beach and Slough goes, "I love you, Chunk," and Chunk goes, "I love you, Slough. You're living with me now. You're gonna come and save me." And Chunk's family go, "I beg your pardon."
Excuse me.
I think that's a sitcom.
I think so.
Always a sitcom.
I mean, the other
end.
thing about it is that it's hilarious, and it's one of the only films that I know, proper film that was made and released and is still around in this form, where at the end someone says, "Oh, I like the bit with the octopus." And then you stop and you think, hang on a second, there wasn't a bit with an octopus, because there was a bit with an octopus that then got cut, and they didn't either realise or they didn't cut that line. And so now you're like, what bit with the octopus? There are kids watching it going, "Mum,
I remember
what
hearing
bit with
about
the octopus? It was mad." But it's brilliant. That's what I love about it. That's part of the folklore and part of the charm of it.
So what's the most fun you can have in your living room this week? The main feature is Contagion, and I know me and Winter have both seen this one. So Winter, what did you think?
It's that Soderbergh thing with Contagion. Soderbergh goes between making just fluff rubbish like the Ocean's films. I know they're really popular. I just don't like them.
Not you don't like any of the Ocean's film, or is it just 12?
Or any of them. Okay. No. Anyway, he sort of goes from fluff to really quite serious, solid films about very serious subjects, and Contagion is one of those. It tells a story of the outbreak of some kind of flu-like virus that's very deadly very quickly. And I just, you know what, it was a film they sort of track how a disease will spread, and there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of the characters are part of the Centre for Disease Control and local police forces and various little officials doing different bits and pieces. And by the end of it, you kind of sit there, and the one thing I thought was, well, I'm glad I didn't watch that in the cinema, because I wouldn't have liked to have touched.
Well, that was the overriding
I wouldn't
feeling.
like to have touched anyone, but if I'd have been sat in the cinema and someone had have coughed at the back of the room, I'd go,
3D.
It would send a shiver.
Well, I went down to do something after I think the first 10-15 minutes of it, and I went downstairs and I thought, God, I've touched about 20 things since I've been, and it just makes you feel so whole. And even now today at work, I was put something in my bag and I thought, oh God, that's touched my trousers, which was then in turn touched my back. And it was horrible. I mean, it has a real lasting effect on me.
Yeah, and the other good thing is it's one of those huge casts. It's Kate Winslet, Paltrow, Matt
Fishburne.
Damon's in there. Yeah, Lawrence Fishburne.
I thought he was great in that.
Yeah, he's a weird guy. I find he either looks like a frog or doesn't, depending on how much weight he's got. He's a bit of an odd bod. But one of those casts where everybody does exactly what they need to do in the film. There's no shining performance and by that I don't mean no brilliant performance, but there's no performance that sort of outplays everyone else. No one's overacting or over-egging it, and it's just one of those very solid workmanlike films that Soderbergh puts out on a serious subject. And right at the end, it has a time structure where it follows a disease, and then right at the end we sort of skip back in time.
It starts with day 2, and then the end scene is day 1, basically.
And it just like any good film should, when you finish it, it just leaves you with that feeling of, is it that simple that we could be facing some kind of pandemic? Are we just luck?
Sounds good.
Are we just sort of luck away from being half wiped
I
out?
know my fiance's dad, he's a GP, and he's absolutely petrified by these kinds of movies because they are extremely possible. They could possibly happen any day. I mean, it's not unlikely that something like this will happen, and that's what I think that's why the film did so well for me, because it was almost like a horror for me, but it was a horror in a much more scary way than any horror character like Jason or something like that would be to me, because it's something that I think can happen, and I just thought it did so well that it was paced like a horror. I thought so, and it carried on killing off its victims, and it was getting worse and worse and worse, and there was different facets to it. Another thing what I enjoyed was it wasn't really about the disease as much; it was the spread of things. So it wasn't just the spread of the disease; it was spread of information, the spread of fear, the spread of panic. And that's why I really enjoyed it, because it wasn't just this disease that's spreading. Oh, how bad! This is an awful disease. It was literally every facet of what would happen, and a lot of thought went into it.
Because there is one of the sub stories is Jude Law. He plays this blogger who's like, he's broadcasting the truth. I'm going to tell you the truth about this disease or about the vaccines they're putting out, and of course he's got seemingly millions of followers, and the question is this disinformation that he's putting out, is this dangerous? Should we be sort of
clamping
do you
down
have to clamp down on this, or do you get this freedom of speech? And I think my one little sort of thing I didn't like about the film is Jude Law has given himself this snaggletooth.
I know. I only noticed that halfway through the film. I'm not sure that he had it.
It's a really. He's got like. He's obviously
Australian as well, by the way.
Oh, really?
He's got like this little sort of snaggletooth, and I thought it's the one bit of the film where you think, well, you haven't done that for any of these other.
Just didn't need to be there.
And because there are plenty of officials in the film that get in the way. There's plenty of official government response that seems to get in the way of progress and safety as well, just the bureaucracy of it, and none of those people are uglied up. None of those people are. So you kind of think, well, it's like they're trying to say, oh, but look, here's the Alex Jones, Rush Limbaugh type figure,
yeah, fair enough,
and they're really dangerous.
But overall, it's one to catch. Yeah, it's a good one.
Well, I've kind of given it a lot of praise, and I did enjoy it, but I just sort of came away with it thinking, yeah, it's fine. Would I watch it again? No, definitely not. And it didn't leave me with the feeling that I'd watched a really, really good film. It was enjoyable, but it's not. I don't know. Usually, when I watch something really good, I come away with a feeling. I think, yeah, that was. I just could have came away with I just feel awful, and I don't want to touch anything.
Yeah, I mean, because there's human drama in it, but there's no melodrama to it. It's a very
matter of fact.
Yeah, it is. There is some.
In the first few minutes, someone dies quite horrendously, and it's like, oh, dead. And it doesn't give the husband much time to reflect. Yeah, there's not much mourning in the film.
Okay.
There's no kind of like, oh, what does it mean, like culturally, or what does it mean to our emotions? It's just if a disease breaks out. Yeah,
well, that's why I felt it was more of a horror film than anything else. It's not tackling obviously there was some moral dilemmas in there and things like that, but it's not tackling all these emotional things. It is a killer that's on the loose, essentially.
One thing that would have made it a must see is if at the end it cut to Caesar and the rest of the apes in the trees going, now let's get him.
Or if day one was like a little monkey from Outbreak and kind of trotted through the scene, that would be good. But so I suppose it's more of one for anyone listening to go out and watch and get back to us and let us know what they think.
Indeed.
So this week on Blu-ray, I managed to catch. We need to talk about Kevin, the film based on Lionel Shriver's book that came out probably, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago now. Maybe even longer actually since I read the book. Like I say, this film directed by Lynn Ramsey. I think we mentioned it in the last podcast we did, and starring Tilda Swinton and John C. Reilly. To be honest with you, I was worried because the book is difficult, in terms of the book itself was written as a series of diary accounts, and so you kind of worry how you're going to be able to translate that into film. And I think that was one of the big successes of it for me, and was how much it worked as a film. I thought it worked kind of flawlessly in terms of there was never any problems with it. In terms of how you saw it, and in terms of getting kind of lost in anything or anything like that. I thought it was brilliantly directed as well, actually, not just in terms of its adaptation, but in just how it looks. It's almost kind of like some horrible dream kind of throughout the whole film. There's a lot of kind of, because it's flashbacking here and there all over the place, and it's very kind of dreamlike in certain sequences. And so I think it was a good decision. They ditched that letter format from the book, and kind of that worked, and they replaced them with flashbacks. I think one thing that was a bit worrying for me was that in the book there's quite a clear kind of delineation, because Tilda Swinton's character Eva is writing all these letters. It's very obviously her point of view. She even kind of talks about a few things in terms of, I hope I've remembered that right, and so on and so forth. And so you do get that kind of air of, she could be telling us anything in this, and we're just going along with it. And I think that's potentially lost a bit in the film. I'm not sure if that comes across, because although I think they are all her flashbacks. They're never kind of shown to be anyone else's, but I just think the nature of a flashback, and the fact that the film does cut around a lot, I think you could be sat there thinking, this was just a complete normal story, and that's kind of how it worked.
Is it all done in flashback then? Is there any voiceover of the stuff she's actually writing?
No, there's no voiceover. It's kind of it's delineated in the same way, kind of like Traffic jumped all over the place, and they had different kind of colour temperatures for different kind of periods of time or different areas. This is kind of shot in the same way as that, so you're never lost. You always know who you are. Her hair changes length as well, which obviously helps, so you're never kind of lost in it. But it was just something that it was more about, that might have been lost about the fact that you're only seeing one side of the story potentially. That kind of, I don't think it affected the film negatively. It just affected my reading of it, because I'd read the book and kind of known the backstory of it in that sense. I thought what a great bit of acting from John C. Reilly in there as the dad, and actually he almost comes across as the villain. He's like the villain of the piece, because he's so lovely, and his kind of approach to parenting is, man, hey bud, everything's good, no, there's no problems here, and hey man, good. Let's not talk about the fact that our kid could be a bit of a psycho. Let's not get involved with that.
Interesting, because it says the title is "We Need to Talk About."
Well, exactly. Basically, he doesn't want to talk about Kevin. He does. That's kind of the problem. But it's quite subtle, and I liked how that was done. I think, as I said, I really enjoyed it. It was a great film, but I think the big plaudit should have gone to Lynn Ramsey as a director. I thought the actual directing of it was fantastic, and it really, really helped to bring that kind of difficult subject, because it's not an easy watch. If you're about to have kids, Winter, if you're about to have kids,
it was not.
This might be a really interesting watch.
It's not a good movie if you're expecting a child, because you do just watch it.
What to expect when you're expecting?
What if? You do watch this film thinking, my gosh, what if? Because what if you just get it wrong? And
I think it also raises the issue that, what if you go through pregnancy and you have the child, and they hand the child to you, and you look at it and you go, because there's that assumed point where they hand the baby over to you, and you go, it's my baby, this is fantastic, it's the best thing in the world, I love this baby more than I'm going to love anything ever in the world, and it's fantastic. But this film does put that the other way, where you get the baby and you just go, this is going to ruin my life. I can't do this anymore, I can't do that, and how is that going to affect me, and what if I don't like it? And so instantly that starts getting in, and it kind of seeps into you, and there's that real fear, I think, that comes from it.
I enjoyed the film. I think one of the slight problems is there is an element of, why don't they just give him a slap? Which is a bad thing to say in many ways, but you kind of do look at it and think, how it's a mystery to how the father, played by John C. Reilly, does not see this.
Yes.
Which in the book is a bit more, a bit more sort of played upon, and you kind of, there's more of a sense of completeness with regards to that storyline. What I like about it is it seems to be a film about sort of the taking on of atonement, because she's effectively paying the price for something this kid has done.
Yeah.
And this is a kid who who is like a sociopath, doesn't feel any emotion about his actions. And so there's a lot of stuff in this town where whatever will happen with this kid happens, and she's slapped by the other townspeople. Her house is trashed, covered in red paint. She spends the rest of the film scrubbing away, which sounds like a really laboured metaphor, but actually works very well within the film. And I think it's testament to what a strong actor can do in a film, because Tilda Swinton really takes the weight of the whole film, and I think the whole thing really rests on her. Yeah. And the kid, what's it, Ezra Miller. Ezra Miller is just, my gosh, what a blank
face.
Look.
Yeah,
it's kind of this blank, emotionless kind of non-character that makes it more plausible, makes it
There's a horrible scene,
scarier.
Horrible scene where she walks in on him masturbating in his bedroom, and she's horrified, and he just stands there and looks at her and continues. And you're like, oh my, that's horrible. That it actually makes you. It's that kind of squirmy feeling, isn't
there's
it?
There's just no register within him.
No. There's no embarrassment. There's no apologies for it. He just kind of get out. That's kind of it. It's really weird. But I mean, don't want to end on a bit of a downer about the whole that kind of stuff.
It seems to be a theme for this week's podcast.
I know it does, doesn't it?
It's a really interesting
It's a great film.
It's one of those films that sparks sort of a debate. And like I said,
I think so.
You can bet half the people who watch it will come away saying, why didn't they just slap him?
Yeah. And the other half will go, well, she's the world's worst mother.
The other thing is, I know there's a lot of play in the film about how he hides his true self or non-self and all this kind of stuff. But I don't know if it's just because the book is slightly removed from sort of English culture, but there's this real sense of, wouldn't social services have picked this up? Wouldn't this have been somewhere along the way? This would have happened. But maybe that's the thing is the kid is essentially a monster. And
maybe
can hide his true self, or does he? Which was another interesting thing about the ending of that film. And I just think it's an interesting take on the subject, and on the subject of, what do you do when someone you're essentially responsible for does something terrible and just does not give a shit?
Yeah.
A fantastic film.
Also out now is the Rum Diary, which I did mention last week, but I hadn't finished watching it at the time. And I'll just a quick word on that. It's an enjoyable film, and it's mostly funny with some poignant moments that do reflect the book. And if you are a Hunter fan, you won't be blinded by rage by it. But it's not faithful enough to the book, in my opinion. I kind of got the feel that Bruce Robinson, the director, didn't want it to be too similar to Fear and Loathing in style. But after I finished it, I just wanted to watch Fear and Loathing. My recommendation is to watch it, but you'll probably end up watching Fear and Loathing after if you're that way inclined.
It's interesting because, just to jump in, because I managed to see it, catch it as well. And like I say, I'm not the world's biggest Hunter S. Thompson fan. I've seen Fear and Loathing, and like I say, I managed to catch this. And it's interesting that you said that he didn't want it to be too much like Fear and Loathing. So he may have done that, but I think he then may have made it too much like With Nail and I, because I was kind of sat there, and the humour is very similar. I mean, maybe that's why Johnny Depp picked him to direct it. I don't know, but I mean, and it kind of works. But I was sat there thinking, oh yeah, that's very funny. With Nail and I is behind me in my DVD collection. I could probably watch that now and just enjoy it. It's that very kind of quick one-liners that no one responds to, and that you that are very funny, but there's no kind of in-joke about it. So I'm like you. I enjoyed it. It was okay. It's quite frothy.
So is it in the middle of the two films, and it made both of us want to watch the other films?
Exactly. There you go. That says something about it, I suppose.
Also out this week is Rob Laurie's remake of Straw Dogs. Rob Laurie made, I think, The Last Castle, which is about the most boring prison film I've ever seen in my life. But anyway, he's remade Sam Peckinpah's 1971 amazingly contentious original.
It's due a remake, so I'm glad someone took a shot at it.
I mean, it's the same basic plot. They've made some changes. It's in America instead of Cornwall.
Yep.
The guy's a screenwriter instead of a mathematician, which to me gives you a bit of a clue as to what's wrong with the remake, i.e., we creative types are so much better, and holy moly, you know what? If you leave New York or wherever, people go to church and people like football and trucks and shooting stuff.
Yeah.
my gosh, I bet they're all a bunch of rapists. I mean, this film, it's so... I mean, I know the original did no favours to Cornwall, but the great thing about the original is you get the impression that the character Peckinpah likes least is Hoffman's character, David Sumner.
Yeah.
And he hates his sort of this kind of intellectual masculinity, I think is what really...
Well, that's why he pushes him so much to act.
Yeah.
That's why he probes him so much and tries to get under his skin. Isn't
and he
it?
really... I think he sees intellectualism as a kind of firstly a moral cowardice, and also just as bullying as being just a surly bugger in a pub.
Yeah.
And I think in the original there's this air of just claustrophobia that builds and builds, and the end is such a release that you actually sort of take an enjoyment in the ending of the original Straw Dogs, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, you know what, I shouldn't. Whereas here, the filmmaker seems to really not like people who aren't liberal and Democrat voting, which, you know, I don't particularly care for sort of the Republican don't tread on me sort of sensibility we see, especially sort of in our news.
Yeah.
You know, the kind of stereotype of your southern rednecks and so. But this is just, I mean, it's just as moronic as anything they're trying to say. Weak sauce is what I'll say about this film. Weak sauce.
Thank you for joining us and spending some time with 24 Lives Per Second, featuring Winter, Russell and myself, Peter. Join us next time for more Guernsey-based film banter. If you agree, disagree, or have anything more to say, then get in touch and we'll give you a shout on the next podcast. Next week, other than the films that we said before showing at the Mallard, we'll hopefully be discussing Moneyball, which is out on the 19th of March, and The Devils, which is being released finally on DVD on the 19th of March. We'll see you then.